So I'm going to make a statement which some people might find quite surprising. I personally learnt more about the biblical model of male leadership, female submission from the ballroom dance floor than I did from any sermon that I've listened to. Now, bear with me a minute and I'll explain how that is the case. So, I used to do social ballroom dancing. Haven't been able to do it for a number of years due to injuries. But back when I used to do it, one thing I would love to do is, in between, I'm in Australia. So one of the forms of ballroom dancing we do is called New Vogue. And that is a pattern dance that everyone's doing the same sequence of steps at the same time. So if you don't fully know how to do that dance, it's great because then you can jump up and join in. And obviously through a night of dancing, in Australia, we've got a dance card of what style of dances are going to be done. We don't know what song's going to get played, but we know, okay, this is going to be this New Vogue, or at different times it's going to be what might be called a modern waltz, which is a freestyle sort of dance where the male would be leading, the female following. Now, in that, I used to really like, in between the different songs I would be dancing, when you'd be having a bit of a rest, I really enjoyed watching other people on the dance floor. And I really enjoyed just, using that time to process different questions that I had at the time. One of the ones that obviously comes up all the time is, how does the male leadership, female submission, how does it actually work? What is the correct balance of it? People throw around these words and they use it sometimes in context, sometimes to mean something else. And it's like, okay, how does this all work together? One time when I was sitting there and watching them dance, I was thinking through and talking to one of my friends who had just started doing, the little comps, doing some competition dancing. And they were explaining how the male's role is, the male's actually got about 4 different things to do. I lose track. The female's got one, to look pretty. The male's roles are things like they've got to actually keep the timing. They've got to see what the next steps are going to be. They've got to communicate that to their dance partner. There's a whole pile of different things. They've got to create the frame, and then the female is the picture. And in that, one of the things that was being explained is when you're in that full, the camera is mirror imaging, but the full ballroom hold, and I'm obviously not in proper hold because I'm too close to the camera. But when you're in that full hold, the female has a 180-degree view of the dance floor. The male has a 180-degree view of the dance floor. And when they're doing that competition style dancing, or even on a social level, whoever is going forward is the person who is leading at that present time. So when you watch different ballroom dances, sometimes 90% of the time, the female is running backwards in heels. I say running backwards because each step is about 1 meter to 2 meters long when you fully travel out. So most of the time, the female is going backwards, but some of the times it is going to be the male going backwards and the female going forwards. At that point in time, the male gives over his right of leadership to the female because the female is the one that has the better vantage point at that point in time. The male is saying, even though the male is choosing the steps, even though the male's still got the role of keeping the time, at that point in time when the female is going forward, the female is the one who is responsible for communicating. Are there dangers ahead? Are there things in the way? Are you about to run into the wall? So it is the female's responsibility at that point in time to lead and to give those warning notifications. And that has to do with as a partnership, as a dance partnership, you both have a 360 view of the dance floor to be able to keep your partner safe, but each person only has a 180 view. And as I was sort of thinking and processing that through, it all really started to make sense to me that it is the male's right to lead. It is the male's responsibility to lead. And in the dance floor, it is the female's responsibility, you might say, to submit to his leadership, to follow the steps that he is saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. Because he can see what is going behind. If all of a sudden the male leads and says, hey, we're going to come to a halt, you trust them because you know on the dance floor, if you don't stop moving and they've seen somebody coming behind you, you're about to crash. So it's that same sort of idea of going, each person has their own vantage point of what they can see, and it's their responsibility to communicate it. It's their responsibility to trust the other person in keeping each other safe, because this life, it's a dance. What's one of the sayings people say? They're like, I want to find a partner to dance with, a partner to be able to do this dance of life with. So I don't know if I've kind of clearly communicated what it was that I learned, but it is that point of going, when seeing that the leadership and the following is actually a two-way street, that there will be times when the male will hand over the leadership to the female and they're going to be sort of back leading, but the male still has the overall authority because that's part of their responsibility. Obviously nowadays, because this is more than 10 years ago, the culture in the dance world changes a little bit, but it is still the people that are doing what is historically the male steps do have all those responsibilities, and the one that's doing the historic female steps do have the other roles. And it is about being able to make that partnership, because on the dance floor, you are, as a female, you are quite literally spinning around in circles on heels while going at a speed that is almost equivalent to running. It's pretty crazy. It's a lot of fun, but that is, and you are attached to another person while you are doing this. So it makes sense why there would be sort of a balancing of roles of who's responsible for what, because that's about you being able to both enjoy the dance and both be able to stay safe. So I hope this has kind of given a completely different perspective on this whole leadership and male leadership, female submission, and that it's more of a caring role and it's more of a partnership situation instead of a domineering authoritarian situation, but is actually something that kind of just comes together, and each person respecting the other person's vantage point. Obviously in dancing it's quite clear because you know you've got your back to it, the other person knows they've got their back. I know when I'd be in the hold, if there was somebody coming behind, I'd like literally just, you'd put your hand a bit firmer against their shoulder or the back of their arm, and that would tell the male that, oh, there's somebody coming behind and I can't keep going backwards, otherwise I'm going to run into somebody. And I just also find it fascinating how in the dancing, you're not communicating with words. The communication is through everything else. They say that 17% of our communication, I just pulled that number out, I can't remember, but it's something around there, is through words, and that the rest of our communication is actually through actions, tone, body language, all these other means. So I really like in the dancing world where you have the verbal removed, and you really get to actually start seeing all these other forms of communication that we do, which are non-verbal. And that's how, for me, I was able to learn more about the biblical method of male leadership, female submission from the ballroom dance floor than from any sermon that I listened to.